second. So good morning, everybody. So it is Wednesday, July 29th, our 10 o'clock meeting. And so today, Barbara is going to do a time and effort presentation, a short presentation, she notes, and then we'll have plenty of time for any questions. We have, I think, both Barbara, of course, is here, and Shelley from the ESEA team is here as well. So I'm sure between our other federal people from the department, we should be able to answer most any question. There may be some, of course, that we can't answer right off. So take it away, Barbara.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, so here we go. Like I started to say, we just wanted to go over time and effort certification and sort of relate that to the COVID relief federal funds that you're receiving currently, and what that looks like when you're filling out your time and effort certification. So time and effort is there's a federal regulation that requires that anytime you pay anybody salaries and benefits using federal funds, that you must document the time spent, and you need to use the following criteria. The employee's time must be documented in writing. The documentation must be based on actual time, not based on what you budget for. The period covered by the documentation may not exceed 1 month unless it's a semi-annual or a fixed schedule PAR, and we'll go over the different types of time and effort. If the documentation or the certification must account for all of the employee's time, and it must be signed by the employee unless it's a semi-annual certification, and we'll go over that right now. So basically, there are 4 types of time and effort certification. You have your semi-annual, you have PARs or personal activity reports, fixed schedule, okay, this is on a timer, hold on. You have fixed schedule PARs, and you have stipend time and effort certifications. Semi-annual certification is used when you have an employee who works 100% of their time. Tyler, I got to stop this for a second.
Yep.
Where's the timing on this? Does anybody know? Like, I did not put timing to this. Is it because I'm on a slideshow?
I don't actually know. I would just keep it out of presentation mode and then just do it this way.
All right, we'll do it this way. I hope everybody can see it. It's probably really small. So semi-annual time and effort is used when you have an employee who spends 100% of their time on one cost objective. So for instance, local entitlement would be someone who spends all of their time in special education. So you can have a semi-annual for all of your federal programs. So you could have one for Title I, you could have one for Title II, you could have one for local entitlement. And with the COVID relief funds, you could have employees who generally are not paid out of federal funds, but now are being paid by ESSERF funds or CRF funds. And if that's the case, then you can go ahead and you can do a semi-annual certification. The great part about semi-annual certifications is that they're fairly condensed little certifications, and they only need to be done twice a year. And they can be signed by either the employee or the employer, which is really great. I wanted to put just some examples of time and effort certifications on here and sort of point out the key components that are required within each of them. So you always want to identify it as time and effort certification and the type of time and effort that you're using. So that in this case, it's a semi-annual. You need the employee's name, their position, what school or school district that they're working for, and the federal funds CFDA number. You need a little affirmation statement. In this case, it's just Jane Doe certifies that she spent 100% of her time engaged in allowable local entitlement activities. And then you have a certification period. Semi-annuals are good for 6 months. So you can see this one runs from January 1 to 6/30. The semi-annual needs to be signed and dated after the certification period has ended. We see a lot of certifications that are dated prior to 6/30 in this case. You can't make an affirmation statement that says you've done something that hasn't happened yet. So you want to make sure it's dated after the fact. You can use semi-annual certifications in a list form if you have more than one employee working on, say, local entitlement. You can go ahead and you can just list those employees out and their position, the school they worked with, the CFDA number. Everything is basically the same, except the supervisor would sign this semi-annual because it's attesting to several different employees. So, to the best of my knowledge, the above referenced employees spent 100% of their time engaged in local entitlement activities. And again, you would have that certification period. The supervisor does need to be someone with firsthand knowledge. So you could not have someone working in an administrative building attesting to work being performed in a whole separate school. So you would want to have a building coordinator or someone assigned to actually fill out your time and effort who would have firsthand on-site knowledge. Then we have the PARs. You'll hear everyone call them PARs. They're personal activity reports. And personal activity reports are used when you have employees working on multiple cost objectives. So you could have someone working in special ed and someone working for Title I, for instance. It must be based, PARs must be based on after the fact determination, so that you cannot estimate. All of the employees' compensated time must be documented, not just what is spent on one federal program or another. Must be prepared at least monthly and must coincide with one or more pay periods. It must include all of the employees' compensated time for that period is the key point here. And PARs must be signed by the employee. Here's an example of a PAR. Again, you want to recognize that this is a PAR. You want to put the employee's name on, the pay period that it covers, the person's job title, and then you need to break out the percentage of work done on each cost objective. So in this case, you can see that this person works in special ed and they get paid with local funds, but currently they're doing 2 hours of before and after school recovery services under the ESSERF funds. So you could see that they do 2 days a week, 4 hours apiece before and after school. And so the breakout for this is 20, 40, 40. So you want to record their hours. You want to give a little description of the activities that were performed. And then you want to break it out by percentage across cost objectives. So you, in this case, you have ESSER funds and you have special ed. This district pays their instructional assistant from both special ed and local funds. And again, that's broken out. It needs to be signed and dated, again, after the pay period. So you want to make sure that you do not sign and date prior to the end of the pay period. There is a fixed schedule PAR. So if you have an employee who works on multiple cost objectives, but they do so week in and week out. So Monday's the same, Tuesday's the same, Wednesday's the same throughout the month. Then you can do a fixed schedule PAR, and that can be done twice a year. It still needs to have the same components as your normal PAR. In other words, you need to break out by category the percentage of time that they spent in each. It needs to have a certification period. It needs to be signed and dated after the certification period has ended. And attached, you'll want to have a copy of their monthly schedule. So basically, this is the schedule that this person works, this instructional assistant works every single month. There can be, we get calls saying, oh, we needed a substitute or something, and we pulled this person off task for a day. Does that mean that we need to go back to the regular PAR? And the answer is no. As long as it's not a significant portion of the employee's time, and that it's a unique situation, sort of a one-off thing, you're fine staying with the fixed schedule. And then you have the teacher stipend worksheets. Teacher stipend worksheets are primarily for professional development, when a teacher attends professional development and gets paid a stipend to do so. The stipend needs to be completed and signed by the conference training supervisor. The information provided is a requirement. So you want to make sure that you want to fill out your stipend worksheets anytime you send a teacher to a workshop and you pay a stipend. The stipend worksheet's going to come into play during the use of the COVID funds. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. So in this case, 3 teachers attended a LDA International Conference and they were paid $500 apiece. So now let's think in terms, I just wanted to give a couple quick examples about how your time and effort may be changing because of the federal funds that you're receiving under the Corona Relief Act. So there are several federal funding sources that you can have at one time right now, and primarily the 2 new federal funds that you receive are the ESSERF funds and the CRF funds. So this is an example that I put out. This is a normal case where pre-COVID, we had a special ed tech working 35 hours a week. They paid 50% with IDA funds and 50% with local funds. This employee would have completed a semi-annual time and effort certification because they spent all of their time working on local entitlement allowable activities. Even though they were paid 50% with general funds, they still worked 100% of their time in special education. So post-COVID, this same employee now spends a couple hours a day packaging student meals for remote delivery. So they do some remote instruction, and then they work for school nutrition packing student lunches. So what do you do with the time and effort on this? Because the ed tech now is working on 2 different cost objectives, IDA in this case and child nutrition, and is paid by 2 different federal funding sources, you would need to do a PAR, and you would need to break out the percentages of their time paid from each federal funding source. Now, I talked a little bit about the stipend coming into play.
Hi, it's Diane. Got boxes. Okay, we'll go down shortly. Thanks.
Barbara,
Bye.
I accidentally muted you a second ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you mute me again?
No, sorry about that, Barbara. I was actually trying to mute somebody else. And
Well, we'll go over it again. So the same employee now works 2 hours a day packing up student meals for remote delivery. So where they formerly would have done a semi-annual because they worked as an ed tech with special ed student all day long, They now are working across 2 cost objectives. So you would need to do a PAR instead of a semi-annual. You would want to identify the amount of time spent in child nutrition, and you may be using ESSERF funds for that, to pay for that. If so, you'd want to indicate that, and then the time they're spending in their regular job under IDEA, and then do your percentage breakout on that. But you would need to do a PAR because they are working in 2 different cost objectives. They're working in special ed and they're working in nutrition. So I also talked a few minutes ago about how a stipend worksheet could come into, time and effort could come into play. We could have an occasion where a teacher is performing their everyday normal activities, but they're offering before and after school recovery services, and they're being paid a stipend to do so. In that case, you will have to employ the stipend time and effort, even though it is designed to be used for professional development. What you would want to do is repurpose that and make sure that you put in there the employee's name, title, the work they performed, and the percentage of their pay that encompasses. So I realize I ran through it really quick and I might have been muted partway through, but I wanted to take questions on different scenarios that you may be thinking about and how you would need to complete time and effort. So I wanted to really leave it with you to ask questions.
So, and we do have a number of questions. So I'm gonna try to pick out for Barbara the ones that have to do around the time and effort reporting, and then we have other questions about CRF or other pieces. I'm
going to stop sharing my screen, Tyler.
Okay. So Diana is asking, on the PARs, is including a percentage info a new directive? We have not done this in the past, but have submitted PARs to DOE finance person who reviews our reimbursement requests, and they have not been turned back.
The percentage indicated on PARs is not new. It's predates me. Not sure when it came into play, but it has always been a requirement. So it should probably have been bounced back. But if you do record the hours, I mean, simple math will tell you what the percentage is, as long as you've indicated all of the employees' work hours on the PAR.
Okay. And then Diana's, of course, she wants to know if she can get a copy of the presentation. So I think
absolutely.
we can post this. Andrea is asking, so while we continue time and effort, her auditor has indicated that the federal government no longer requires time and effort certifications. And so they no longer audit the so her auditor no longer audits the certifications.
So we at DOE have not received that directive from the federal government. So until we do, it will be a requirement. It's been in play forever and ever, and I cannot imagine it going away.
And then, so Rafe is asking, is PAR bi-monthly or bi-week?
PARs are monthly. Semi-annuals are semi-annual, and fixed PARs can be semi-annual as well.
And Marcia's asking, what if we apply for additional summer testing that is now needed in special services to see where students are based on distance learning? Would they be doing it? So she's saying, would this be a stipend card or a PAR?
So that depends. Are you using teachers who are still being paid off contract through summer hours? Because if you are, you would have to go with the stipend. So anything in addition to, so time and effort can only account for full-time hours. So anything above and beyond that you're using federal funds for, we need to do a stipend time and effort. So a teacher who's paid full-time off contract through the summer hours, who's going to be performing work and getting paid for that work, in addition to their contract, you would need to do a stipend.
And so I'm going to take a break from the chat because I see Diana has her hand raised. So Diana, if you want to
I want to go back to RAFE for a minute. It
Okay.
cannot be more than 1 month RAFE. Some people do send them in weekly or bi-weekly as payroll is done, but it cannot exceed more than 1 month.
Okay. So Diana, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you. And thanks for Barbara for saying that it didn't have to be monthly, because we've always done bi-weekly, and I thought, oh no, here we go, we've got to change this too. So
No.
Now back, I can't remember who it was that did your job before. Well, maybe it wasn't even your job, Barbara, but somebody came out and did a review with us my very first year, 2015, with RSU 20, and he specified object code, object code, object code. If they didn't, for instance, if an ed tech worked in 2 different funding sources but had the same object code, they were an ed tech, that we didn't have to do a PARS. And I'm hearing something very different. I'm hearing objective, cost objective, and not object code.
Yeah, it's based on federal funding objective. So
Right.
IDA is special education.
Right. Now,
Period.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood this correctly. So we will be changing the way we do it. Thank you.
Yes, and so right now it's a little complicated because ESSERF funds and CRF funds can be used in all federal, basically under any federal program. So you could actually have 2 federal funds paying for special education activities. So in the case of the summertime recovery services or ESY services, you know, the additional services, you could very well be paying for that out of your ESSERF funds.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to make sure that you delineate between those 2 federal funds and keep clear record of how many hours in each.
Yes, thank you.
So, so now Bridget is asking, paying school year staff to attend planning meetings this summer and are paying them hourly from additional pay sheets. Will this sheet qualify as a stipend PAR?
So if you're paying, yeah, it would, if you're paying them with federal funds. So oftentimes when they attend those meetings, they're paid out of general funds. But if you chose to use a federal fund like ESSERF funds to pay for that, then you would need to do a PAR.
So I'll just note that probably because I've been out of this for a little bit, I'm reviewing time and effort. As these things come up, I'll probably have to meet with Barbara to make sure I'm reviewing them correctly and applying that correctly. So then we have another question. We have a part-time. Oh, wait a minute. I missed one from Scott. So what do we do if we have an administrator getting a stipend?
So right now, administrators can qualify under ESSERF if they're administering those funds. The part-time administrator, I'm going to be careful here because administrators generally are not, at least in my world, are not allowable under federal funds. So first of all, they have to be allowable, but if whatever fund you're paying them from, whatever federal fund you're paying them from, you would need to do a PAR. So anytime you pay anybody with $1 of federal funds, you need to have time and effort. So in this case, they're part-time. Well, let me back this up. If they're only part-time and they only work on that cost objective, then that's 100% of their time. So it doesn't matter if an employee works 10 hours, 20 hours, or 40 hours, we're looking at the percentage of their time. So the percentage of that 10 hours, the percentage of that 20 hours. So it's not based on whether or not you're part-time. That being said, if they work part-time on one of these, like a corona relief activities, and then 50% of their time in administration for the school, then you have a PAR. Does that make any sense, Tyler, or did I go around the wheel too many times?
I think for the most part, but I'm going to guess we're probably going to get some follow-up
If
questions
it's
around.
only a part-time administrator working under ESSERF funds to do COVID-related activities for the district, they work part-time, they work under ESSERF on COVID activities, then they could do a semi-annual because it's 100% of their time, even though they only work part-time hours. It's still all they do. Then it would be a semi-annual. If they do that and something else, then it would be a PAR.
So then we have a part-time salaried art teacher who also works part-time as an ed tech in Title I. What would be the best way to handle this?
That's a PAR.
Okay.
That is a straight out PAR. So you would have Title I, and then your art program probably falls under your general funds. So you would have your PAR, you would say how many hours they work in each, and then a short description of what they do for Title I, and then part-time art teacher as the other activity. And then, but if they work the same thing day in and day out, I would definitely do a fixed schedule because you would just only need 2 pieces of paper with the attached schedule, pieces of paper versus a PAR, which is monthly, or some people use timesheets with affirmation statements on them.
And so I think Bridget's questions is fairly close to Marcia's, so I'll say it, and I think you're just going to say same as the other one, but so paying school year staff to attend planning meetings this summer and are paying them hourly from an additional pay sheet, will this sheet qualify as a stipend PAR?
It will. Again, if you're paying them out of local funds, you do not need to do time and effort. It's only federal funds that we're looking at here.
And so Tiffany is asking, can you share the stipend form again?
I can share the stipend form. So I'm going to put the PowerPoint in, attach it to the recording today. And I'll also add one that's been modified to deal with the extra federal funds that you're receiving right now. Because it would need a little more information, like how many hours the person works. So I'm going to attach 2 different stipend worksheets, one that's been modified for ESSER and CRF funds.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top, and we have some CRF questions that are in the chat, and I'll try to answer, or I'll answer the ones that I can. And so if you don't hear your question, I probably just don't know the answer. We do have these. I'll have these questions, and I can share them with the DOE team. And if they're not already part of the Q&A, we can add them to the Q&A. So I'm going to try to answer the ones that I can, and we do have a couple of other people from the department. So they're if they want to chime in on any of them, then by all means chime in. So we have a question: when is the CRF application available? So that should already be posted, or that went to the superintendent of your school district. So so in a sense, it's already available. It's not being posted. It was sent directly to the superintendent. Asking CRF funds, can we change the projects within the September through December 30th spending period? I guess I'm not. Diana, can you clarify your question about the CRF funds?
So what did I ask?
Can we change the projects within the September through December 30th spending period for this? And then before that, you put CRF funds. So are you asking about, can you change your ESSER?
No. For instance, I haven't looked at the application yet for CRF, but with other federal grants, we can create a project. And then if we're 2 months down the line and realize it's not going to come to pass and we want to do something else with the funds, can we change up our CRF, or are we committed to what it is we applied for?
Yes, you can change them, and you'd have to talk to Stan about that, but just keep in mind the timeline that we do have for
Yes,
the
yes.
funds. And so I'm suspecting that may be part of the reason why you're asking the question on if you can change them, because maybe your initial attention, all of a sudden you're seeing you can't get that committed quickly enough.
Right. I mean, we think we know what we're going to do with it, and we think we think we're going to know what we're going to do with it by, say, August 25th, but everything is so fluid.
Yep. So
Thank you.
Yep. Lori's asking, what is the gas number and the vendor code? So these are state generated numbers from our Department of Administrative Financial Services. So once those numbers will actually be present on your grant award notice, which I think the instructions say something different. And so we'll be updating that to note that they'll be on your grant award notice. And so I know Joanne already answered Teresa's question about the fund and the fund number for CRF. And so Lori's asking for a copy of this, and so Barbara has posted that. So Marcia's asking, if we apply for positions under Maine PERS in the CRF fund, does the rule still apply for using the higher federal government retirement rate? So essentially, anything that is not GPA funded, the higher rate applies to. So the only positions that actually get the lower rate are those that are funded by general purpose aid. And so Joanne actually noted that in the chat as well. We answered that. So Lucy's asking, the CRF funds have to be spent by December 30th, 2020, or December 30th, 2020. When does the ESSER have to be spent by? And it should be September 30th of 2022. Answered that. So, and then we have a question. Do the private schools also get funds for the CRF funds, or are those funds just for applying school districts? So the CRF funds are different than the ESSER funds. So if everybody remembers, with the ESSER funds, we're of course using the same rules from the Title I, and so if you had a private school within your boundaries, then they may get a portion of those ESSER funds. So unlike those, the CRF funds they actually are a completely different fund, and they're not even, so they're not, they don't follow all the same rules as the ESSER. And so we did allocations to the school districts, and so those are all for your school district. And then we also allocated funds out to the special purpose private schools, and to the 60-40, what are sometimes called, I think, and now I'm going to forget the term, but so they're the schools that are 60% publicly funded. So they have their own allocation, and then the two magnet schools, the charter schools, which are of course a school administrative unit as well, but the magnet schools and I believe, and of course EUT also had an allocation. So the allocations are specific to being spent by your school district. and we did do it to by attendance. So some school districts, of course, don't have any attending students, and so we do have a separate allocation that we are determining how to spread that money out, because there are still some costs, of course, even if you don't have any students, you still, you're still responsible for getting your, at least your elementary students to their school. So we are looking at ways to allocate that funding out to, some of the districts that don't have attending students. Oh, and so Chelsea is noting, if you need the CRF application link resent to you, send a direct message to Chelsea and she will get that sent. And then Teresa saying the superintendent was told that if we commit the funds with a teacher contract, we use CRF funds to pay the teacher through June. Is this correct? So you can only pay the teacher out of the CRF funds for the portion of pay of what's being paid through December 30th. So even though their contract may run through June 30th, you can only use the CRF funds for payments through December 30th. And so Chelsea included some information. So Sheila, Raymond. So good information. So those are correct as far as CR. Wow, actually, so those are actually flipped. Those are flipped. So the CRF is 3/1/2020 through 12/30/2020. The ESSER, which came out first, is actually 3/13/2020 through 9/30/2022. And so I think my statement previously, does this basically mean that new employees can only be hired for the first half of the year through ESSER? It would actually be the CRF if you were to hire a new staff member that wasn't previously budgeted, then yes, you can only pay for their paychecks or their payroll through the 12/30. And Joanne also added some information in there. And Chelsea added some other good information. So Teresa's asking, we had our ESSER application approved before CRF came out. Can we switch gears and buy items approved in the ESSER application with CRF instead, e.g. buying stand-ups for hand sanitizers before the end of December? So as long as those items weren't previously budgeted, and so what we've said previously budgeted means is with your general fund, or would also probably add in there, you probably had already developed a budget and for your normal other federal funds that you get on a yearly basis. But so if it's something that's brand new and only came about because of the response to COVID-19, just because it was in your ESSER application does not stop you from switching that over to the CRF funds. Oh, so Diana, this actually would be good. I was incorrect in stating that Chelsea linked the CRF application may only be submitted once.
That was the sound of me picking myself up off the floor.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, Diana. So and Chelsea is noting revision should be discussed with the CRF director, who's and Chelsea provided the email for Stan. So I am gonna wait just a moment to see if any other questions come in.
Sorry, Tyler, could you just repeat the answer to Terry Wood's question about whether the CRF application has to be completed in one sitting? I missed that.
So Chelsea noted that the CRF may be only submitted once, and then she did add in there, if a revision would be needed, it needs to be discussed before you change gears with Stan to ensure, that if there was a revision, that it's approvable. And so because these do have to be committed so quickly.
I guess my question was, is there like a save feature? Can I go in and work on it in part and then come back out? Or is it something that I actually have to complete in one fell swoop?
That's exactly what I'm asking, because
okay.
sometimes you submit and it's like, oh my gosh, I just am trying to put some of the data in. So that's, I went in last night and that's what I'm wondering.
Chelsea, do you know I haven't worked with it to know whether they're more asking if it can be saved without necessarily being submitted. So if they work on it some and then, so I do know it's a Qualtrics survey.
I know last night I couldn't hit the arrow to go to the next page without completing everything, and that's why I'm worried.
So we'll have to follow up on that. So I will try, I'll talk with Tyler Rollins, who uploads our videos, and see if we can get this one uploaded out of order. I know we're trying to upload some other videos to the YouTube page, to the department's YouTube channel. So I'll ask him to prioritize this presentation just for its timeliness. And so Tiffany's asking, where will we be able to find the initial presentation? And so the presentation was recorded and it's on the CARES Act webpage, which Chelsea has given out. And so just note that's a different recording than of course this recording on time and effort, which we will get on the YouTube page. So being asked, it would be nice to have all the questions for the CRF application in advance. Started the application not realizing that they needed a spreadsheet. Are the questions available without opening the application? So I don't know if we can, if we're able to do that. But it's been noted. So time and effort forms. Do we have suggested forms, Barbara? Or do we have examples?
Yeah, we do. They're on both the ESSA team website and special ed.
Okay.
But I'll get you a link.
Okay. So Barbara will post a link. But on both of their websites, there's some information for that. And so Chelsea's noting around getting posting the questions for the application. We'll check with Stan to see if we can have that done. So I'm going to wait for Barbara to post the link to some of the time and effort forms. And then once that's completed, I'm going to go ahead and actually I can stop the recording. So it seems as though our questions have slowed down. And of course, now Diana asked one more, or at least has a statement. So application page says that supers of more than one district must complete one application before opening another. So that's also good information to have for everybody else. So if you do have more than one school district, you would have to complete one before starting another one. And so thank you everybody for coming today. I'm going to stop the recording now, and Barbara has posted the link in the chat. So if you need that information, that is a place to go ahead and get any of the time and effort forms.
Tyler, the
yes.
only thing that will not be there is the modified stipend time and effort, which
Okay.
I'll attach with the presentation.
Okay.